Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Baker Senior Show, where we're talking about Medicare. And today's topic is all about the mistakes that we want to avoid. And we have 7 of them. Mr. Baker is going to help us understand the most common mistakes that people make and how we can avoid them and why we should pay attention to the 7 mistakes that you should avoid. Hello, Mr. Baker. How are you today?
Hello.
Are you doing well?
I'm doing terrific. I am doing terrific.
Yes, I love to hear that. Good. Well, let's start off by telling people who you are and why you're here talking to us about Medicare.
Well, I've been doing this for many years, and one of the things that I found is that over the years you still learn new things about Medicare. And so I was reading some stuff the other day, and I ran across the 7 mistakes to avoid when signing up for Medicare. And I was reading them, and I knew all of this. I kind of had filled in with certain things at certain times with certain situations. And I was reading there, and I'm going, yeah, a client of mine made that mistake, and then another one, and then another one. So I said, it'd be really good to go over these. They don't happen a lot, but people definitely need to be aware of them. And one of the most important things that people need is they need someone to talk to who knows what they're talking about. So I just like to go over these 7 possible mistakes. As I said, it doesn't happen that often, but it's very important for people to know this. So we will be glad to go over those this morning.
I appreciate that. As most people that get up in their 60s start to realize is that it's kind of confusing. First of all, our government and all the legal descriptions and the policies that go into it, we're unclear on exactly what's happening with Medicare. And I think a lot of times we get to talking to a neighbor or a friend who's gone through it, and we pay attention to what they say because they've been there or they did that. And we shouldn't do that because sometimes they lead us astray. Isn't that true?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
exactly.
You've seen that happen before, haven't you, Steve?
Correct.
Yes. Well, we're here every Tuesday morning, Central Time, 8:00 a.m. And if you would have any questions at all, you can come in live on YouTube and Facebook, or you can watch our replays. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And one of the things that I've learned from Steve is that just because you made an error in signing up some way, that doesn't mean you can't correct it. So if you give Steve a call at 832-754-3292, he can help you figure out the best way to get out of that mistake. Because a lot of us do. We rely on the internet. We rely on our friends to tell us. And sometimes that's not the best advice.
Right.
It is complicated. So you're here to help us go through all the ins and outs. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I've learned from Steve, just by being his friend and just being around him, listening to the different things about Medicare, is that everybody is different. So your case is totally different than the person next door. And how do I know that? Experience. So if you've heard me say this before, it's so true. Because I had a friend who needed to go into a personal care home, and she couldn't get out to go to the doctors anymore. And so Steve saw that her Medicare didn't cover the people coming into the home anymore. We had to go out. So Steve took the time to find the right answer for her. So your answer is going to be totally different. And that's why I think it's so confusing. What is the top mistake that people make when they are trying to figure out Medicare?
Well, one of the things that's important to know is that there's some regulations in terms of turning 65. And typically people, most people work over a period of time all their adult lives. So there's really no issue with getting what we call 40 quarters or 10 years of qualification before they become eligible for Medicare at age 65. So one of the things I want to make understood, that just people should not just assume that they don't qualify for Medicare, even if they haven't worked long enough at 40 quarters. And here are the exceptions to that. And people need to be made aware of it. You might have to pay a premium for Part A. Part A is when you're eligible for Medicare. Basically, you can choose your Part B at any time, but Part A, you're eligible for Medicare. And typically speaking, you're sent a card that just says Part A. You might have to pay premiums if you don't have 40 quarters or 10 years in your workforce. You may qualify for Part A by paying a premium. Doesn't mean that you can never have it. You might have to pay a premium for it. And also, if you're married and your spouse has been working 40 quarters and not you, then you could qualify for Part B. And the other thing is you need to check these out before waiting to see if you have enough quarters. Find out if you have enough quarters. And you typically do that through the Social Security office. And it's at this point where Social Security and Medicare kind of marry each other and kind of mingle. After you get your Medicare card and you get your A and B and you get all that going, then they kind of separate. But for this period of time, most of the information that you can get is through your Social Security office. Don't fail to enroll in Part B when you should. Determine if your employer has 20 or more employees, and then you could go ahead and enroll in Part B. Or it may be more advantageous for you to wait until later to enroll in your Part B. So you need to speak with a professional about where you are, particularly when you start turning 63 and 64, for sure. You need to check with someone about where do you stand as far as Medicare. And don't think, right, go ahead.
That person is you, right?
That is correct.
See, that's why I put your phone number right there up on the screen.
Right.
Because everybody's different, and all they have to do is tell you their situation, and you're going to help them. So when should they call you?
Well, here's the thing. As I say, when you approach 64 for sure, and more importantly, I guess, is age 63. But in that range, you need to check with someone and say, okay, here's my situation. What do you recommend? Wait, or go ahead and take some action, or do what? And a lot of it has to do with your employment. First off, do you have 40 quarters? That's one that puts you in one category. If you don't, that puts you in another category. So you must check it out at about that age. And then there's a lot of confusion about retirement age and Medicare eligibility. Nowadays, it's full retirement age is more closer to age 67 than 65 or 66. But don't think you must reach full retirement age to qualify for Medicare. Medicare is still age 65. So if you're working with someone, and a lot of things, you hear this in the office and that in the office, if you got a friend or you've got a relative, they'll tell you certain things. But I coach everyone to make sure you find out for yourself where you stand, not your person who's a friend at work, or your neighbor, or your cousin, or whatever.
And everybody's got an opinion about it, don't they, Steve?
Everybody's got an opinion of it, and every situation is a little different.
Yes.
So you
Now
have to.
you said don't forget, about your Medicare, and I don't think that anybody can forget, especially when at age 62 you start getting things like this,
Right,
where they
exactly.
want you to put your phone number in here so that they
Yeah,
can give you the Medicare update. It's important. This is important. Important.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Already, I'm only 62, and they're already hounding me.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think we're going to forget, but I think it's so confusing that we try to push it away. We try to not think about it until it's like an emergency. And then it's like, oh
Right.
my God, I better call Steve. I better call Steve. So
Right.
be sure and call him 6 months minimum before your birthday so
Uh-huh.
that you know where you stand and you know what to do when
Right.
it's time.
Right. 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 Exactly. Exactly. Another error, mistake that people make is that that has to do with your Part D prescription. Remember, there's Part A, there's Part B, Part C is the Medicare Advantage program, and then there's also Part D. That's the prescription program. Uh, it may or may not be really important for you to have the Part D prescription program because if you don't take any prescriptions, and a lot of people when they reach a certain age, they're not taking prescriptions. So I don't need that. Yeah, well, you do need it, and the reason you need it is because you've got a window to go ahead and apply for it and qualify for it, and usually it's not very much. Someone who's not on any medications, the premiums are really, really low, just a few dollars a month, whatever, to go ahead and get enrolled in the Part D. And as the time goes on, you'll be very, very grateful that you've done that, because what that means is that you've got that under your belt, and so you've got Part A, you've got Part B, you've got your D set in, and if you want to go the Medicare Advantage route, you need your C. So you need to have all your bases covered for sure. So
Well, I'm glad you're straightening out the most common mistakes that people make. I think it's mostly because we are confused, and anytime a mind gets confused, it shuts down or shuts off or turns around and goes plays a game.
mhm, right,
it doesn't
right,
it doesn't want to. And so
hmm
I think it's so interesting that all they have to do is call you and you can help them figure it all out. They don't need to know everything about Medicare in order to get the right coverage if they just
hmm
call you.
right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And and if you have a question, it may or may not apply to you, and you
Mm-hmm.
need to know it applies to you or it doesn't apply to you. So I talk to people all the time. They call me and say, "What about this and what about that?" And so I ask a few questions, and then I find out you don't even have to worry about that in your situation. Just don't even worry about it. Well, I heard this and I heard that. Okay, well, let's talk about it a little bit. And then sometimes I find, okay, you don't have to worry about that yet. You may at a later date, but right now you don't have to worry about that. So, or I could tell them it does apply to you. So we need to talk a little farther about it. So one of the things that I tell people is and it's this is the time of the year, not right now, but the time you watch this, it may be the time between to the weeks and months leading up to October 15th. October 15th through December 7th every year is what's called open enrollment period. And you need to check in with someone like me and find out if the open enrollment period applies to you or it doesn't. So, open enrollment period is very important. And this is the period of time, it's like a 7 week period where you can make some adjustments in your plan, perhaps, and go ahead and get in on board and even qualify for Medicare.
Oh, tell us again
So,
what those dates are.
October 15th
October
through
15th through
December 7th.
December 7th. And why did they pick that, and why that particular time frame?
I'll be honest and just tell you, I don't know. It just is. My children used to say, "Why is the sky blue?" I don't know. It's blue. It's not red. It's blue. That's just it.
Okay.
October 15th through December 7th.
Through December 7th. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm going to put that up on the screen because I know you've mentioned it several times before, but it goes by so fast. And like I said, I know Medicare is very confusing, so I want people to be able to know that that is a very critical time. So if I were you and you were approaching Medicare age, say a year before or 6 months before, I wouldn't wait till October 15th to call Steve. I would call him before that because you're probably pretty busy between October and December. And so you'd want to know what's coming up for you. So if you're anywhere near 65, then I would, if I were you, call Steve, especially if it's somewhere between October and December, because you don't want to miss out on something. You know, it's a rule somebody made up. Steve doesn't know who made it up or why they made it up, but it's between October 15th and December 7th. That's your open enrollment period. And for some reason, that's really important. Right. So that's all you need to know.
Right. Yeah. And of course, that occurs every year. Another very, very important date is, when do you turn 65? That is very important. So this is where it gets a little confusing, because it's different from the open enrollment period. Turning 65, you have a window. It's 6 months before your 65th birthday and 6 months after your 65th birthday to go ahead and get enrolled and get, if you want a supplement, then you can do that. Or if you want to go with Medicare Advantage, you can do that on either side of your 65th birthday.
What do they call that? A grace period?
Yeah, it's open enrollment period. It's what's called open enrollment.
Oh, that's an open enrollment as well.
Mm-hmm. 65th birthday, though, that's one time in a lifetime. So when you turn 60, if you start to turn 65, that's when, for sure, absolutely, you need to check in with someone who can evaluate your situation.
Okay.
And the reason that's so special is that you could have some major health issues leading up to age 65. And you don't have to answer any health questions if you're in that open enrollment period. That's why it's so very important. Once you move past that, then you might have some issues with.
Then you might need to wait until October the next year.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, exactly.
Now, Steve, if you're on Medicare, let's say you're 67 and you're on Medicare, you're doing pretty well. Do people need to check back in with you to see if they're on the right Medicare program every once in a while?
Yes, especially the Part D program. You've got A, B, and C, and then you've got the D program. The Part D program is your drug program. Now, again, every year you can change your prescription program. If your drugs, if you've been introduced to new drugs, if you've gotten a prescription and you go to the pharmacy and that's really, really expensive, you'd absolutely have to check with someone so that you could possibly change your Part D program. Again, in that open enrollment period, October 15th through December 7th, you have the privilege of changing your prescription program again. So no matter where you are in the Medicare, you need to really pay attention to your prescriptions.
So you're really busy between October 15th and December 7th. No wonder I don't hear from you for those times. It's like, you can't get a hold of Steve. You better call him before that.
Right. And really always remember that, that you can check in, anytime. with with someone. Don't fail to realize that you may qualify to help lower your costs. If your costs are getting out of hand, then if your Part D is costing a lot of money, or if your premiums are raising, they start to rise on you, then you need to check someone to see if you can get on another plan for less cost. And you may or may not be able to, but it's always very important just to check in to make sure. So there's extra things that you can take advantage of during the open enrollment period that you're not taking advantage of it presently. That's why those 7 weeks are very, very important. And if you have relatives, an aunt or an uncle or a mom or a dad, you need to check with that person to make sure that during this open enrollment period they check with a professional to see if they can qualify for an enhanced program, or they can get on a program with less cost. That's very important. So those are the seven. Mistakes that people make a lot, and I try to stay in touch and communicate with my people on a regular basis to make sure that they monitor their whole program. And the old saying, set it and forget it. Well, with Medicare, you can't just set it and forget it. You've got to be aware and be check in, especially this season, that comes up between October 15th and December 7th.
So, Steve, is it typical for Medicare to change every year, or does it pretty much stay the same?
Well, Medicare pretty much stays the same. However, people's situation, it's not Medicare that changes. Possibly it's a person's situation that changes. So that's
well, the marketers seem to make you think so, because they're telling me 2020 Medicare update. Woohoo! There's an update.
Right.
There's an update. You'd better contact me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made me think about that. I thought, okay, so maybe there's they're running out of money, or
well,
that's not a laughing matter, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, Medicare is a very competitive industry, and people start getting their mailboxes when they start approaching age 65. Their mailboxes start filling up, and their telephone starts ringing, and you're going, oh, what is all this? So what I encourage people is to talk with someone who you choose to talk with, not someone who's calling you or knocking on your door or sending you all kinds of mailings and so forth. Some of those mailings are they're very professional, and the companies all spend a lot of money sending that stuff out. You can open them up and you can see they're very glossy and so forth. Lots of times through the years, I've been go in someone's living room and right in the dining room area, and I'll go in sometimes and sit down in the dining room table. Right on the edge will be just a stack of stuff, just really, really stacked. And I said, you know what that is? And they'll say, what? I said, that's piles of confusion. It's what that is. So within about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, I can clarify a lot of things and determine what situation they're in. And a husband and his wife are different ages a lot of times, so they're in different situations. One of them is a lot healthier than the other one. That creates a situation in the family. So it pays to talk with someone about what you need to know about Medicare. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do business with that person, because I talk to people all the time. You don't have to do business with me. I'm an agent. I'm a licensed agent for Medicare, but that doesn't mean you have to do business with me. You can do business with anybody. But the important thing is to get educated and know where you stand.
In every industry, Steve, I have noticed over the years of being in business, every industry has people who care and people who just want to make a buck. And one of the things I love about you is of course you want to make a living. This is your business, but you truly care. You go out of your way. You go way above and beyond anybody else that I've ever met that sells Medicare or health insurance. And it's so low key. You just want to educate people. And because of that, people want to sign up for Medicare with you. I mean, how could I trust anybody else when I have the best right here in front of me?
Right.
I think that's very important, that you connect and click with the person that you're trying to get information with.
Yes.
Or, from.
and let me point out that there are lots and lots of professionals out there. People like myself who educate themselves and are intense on educating the people. I work with a whole group of people. I'm an independent agent, but I associate with people just like me, and we have regular meetings. We get together and we discuss all the different ways and ideas that where people are situated in. And I learn a lot by talking to my colleagues about what they do and how this works and who to see about this and where to call about this and so forth. So it's always a continuing education. As a matter of fact, in a few hours I'll be on a call, and we're going to talk about this one particular company that's coming on board, and it looks like they're going to be a really good company. But we're going to discuss the pluses and the minuses for this company just to see if it will fit most of the client calls that I have. So we'll see. I mean, we discuss it. So it's a matter of continuing education.
Fantastic. I also want to remind everyone, if you haven't gotten your copy of Medicare and You, all you have to do is let Steve know, and you can get a free copy. It's a book that's called Medicare and You. And if you call 832-754-3292, Steve will make sure that you get a copy of that book. Now, this is a very comprehensive copy. It's a huge book. It's filled with everything you could possibly ever want to know about Medicare. And you might not want to read it, okay? It might be a boring read, but at least if Steve tells you that he's recommending that you go on part this or part that, or an Advantage plan, or not to, at least you can look through the book and read even more about it. And he's willing to let you have this book. All you have to do is give him a call, and keep yourself educated as well. Now, there are people who could care less. They just want to know, where do I sign? I want to get signed up. I'm busy. What do you say, Steve? And they just want you to do everything for them, and that's okay too, right?
Yes, it's okay, but generally I'll say, well, I have a few questions. I ask the questions.
Right.
I have a few questions.
Right.
Before we determined exactly where you need to be, I have some more questions.
That's right.
So I found out through the years that you can always determine a lot of things by asking people questions.
Yes, so. I totally agree with that. Well, don't forget the open enrollment period is between October 15th and December 7th, and it may seem like a long way away because it's only June now, but it's coming up. So be sure and be aware that if you turn 65, you have 6 months before and 6 months after that you also have an enrollment period. But I would not wait. If you're turning 65, I would call Steve the 6 months before so that you can get all the information that you need, so that you can be aware and covered for all the things that might happen for you, because you're different. Right, Steve?
Correct.
All right. Well, do you have any last words of encouragement or things that we need to think about?
I think we've just about covered it.
Okay.
I really do.
Thank you for joining us today. This is the Baker Senior Show. We're here every Tuesday at 8 o'clock Central Time. We're live on YouTube and Facebook, and we also have a podcast called Baker Seniors. So be sure and take us with you if you're riding in the car or you're out mowing the lawn, walking the dog. You can listen to our podcast as well. And please share this with your friends, your neighbors, and especially people in business. Steve wants to talk to the HR department of any business that has employees that would like Steve to come in and give a free presentation about retirement and how it affects you when you're working or if you're going to stop working. So just reach out to Steve no matter what your situation is, and he'll take care of it. Thank you, Steve. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Bye for now. We'll see you next week.
Bye.